Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, AASHTO Committee on Transportation Systems Operations, Community of Practice on Road Weather Management. My name is Nilu Parvin-Ashtiani and I will help facilitate today's webinar. So today's webinar is hosted by the National Operations Center of Excellence, or NOCO. If you don't know already, at NOCO we offer resources to support the transportation system management and operations community. A couple of ways for you to connect with us is shared with you on the bottom left side of your screen through the useful links. So you can find there our NOCO's Knowledge Center link and also YouTube channel where you can follow us for webinars, or just you can subscribe to our newsletter for major AASHTO announcements. So now I'll cover a few logistics for today's webinar. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording along with the presentation slides will be available through the on-demand learning section of the NOCO's website. All the attendee phones are on listen-only mode by default, but we'd like you to stay engaged by using the chat pod for comments and questions. We'll have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, as the questions come to your mind during presentations, we encourage you to put those questions in the question pane at any time. The questions will be read out loud at the end one at a time, and our presenters will answer those questions. So for our webinar today, we have 3 presenters. First, we'll have Steve Cook with Michigan DOT, followed by Romer Alfalor with FHWA, and last but not least, we'll have Richard Nelson with AASHTO. The presenters' full bios are available on the webinar webpage on NOCO website, so please refer to those to learn more about our speakers today. So with no further ado, with that, I'll hand it over to Steve Cook to start us off with the webinar. Steve?
Thanks, Nilu. Yeah, I'm Steve Cook with the Michigan Department of Transportation, as Nilu said. I'm the Engineer of Operations and Maintenance. I'm also a member of the AASHTO Committee on Transportation System Operations. I'm also a member of the AASHTO Committee on Maintenance. I'm the Vice Chair on the Bridge Technical Working Group for the Committee on Maintenance, and also the Chair for this new area called the Committee of Practice on Road Weather Management for the Committee on Transportation System Operations. A little bit about the webinar itself. I thought it was timely to have a discussion, and I show the agenda there, about the Community of Practice and what the Community of Practice is and where AASHTO is coming from on this concept, because this is a new concept since about last year. 2017, we got together at the Beckman Center, and the annual meeting that we had in Rapid City, South Dakota, and discussed what that would be, its role and responsibility, and how it would interact with some of the other subcommittees and working groups within that committee. So for today's webinar, kind of want to go over the purpose of the webinar, talk about a little bit about the structure that the committee has now, the TSO committee, an overview on the organizational structure. Some of you may have seen that, some of you may have not. It's out there on the website. The Community of Practice, it's the COP on road weather management, the purpose, the mission, and its strategic areas of focus. Talk about TSM&O and how that builds into all of that. Its initiatives, some of the strategies and resources within the road weather management area, related programs, questions to consider going forward. And then we'll hear from Romer Alfalor on the FHWA Road Weather Management Program. Rick Nelson has put together a few webinar poll questions that we're going to use to be able to follow up on next steps from this webinar, and then possibly look at some peer-to-peer workshop or some other place we can get together to talk about some next steps and action items, priority action items that we'd like to initiate and act on going forward. Then after that are Q&A. So again, following the agenda, the purpose of the webinar, for the AASHTO Community of Practice on Road Weather Management, it's to understand the Community of Practice on Road Weather Management, its purpose, its mission, its strategic areas of focus, kind of get an outreach and awareness of the community of practice to the transportation community. As you know, weather is everything, so it's really to open up that dialogue. It's everywhere and anywhere we are, so we really have to keep in mind this open dialogue as to what the community of practice is and its availability of the information that's out there and how it can be leveraged into the working groups within the committee and other working groups in other committees like the Committee on Maintenance. Again, creating this TSML 365 weather elements. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And so Rick Nelson, what improvements or elements are needed for an all-weather committee on TSO. Promote the implementation on the road weather management solutions and strategies that minimize the impact of weather events on transportation system operations. Initiate a forum for discussion of the existing and emerging road weather management practices, you know, the technologies, the strategies, the tools that are out there, the resources that are there, such as the state of the practices that we're doing right now with EDC4 and EDC5, the workshops that FHWA is doing. Some of the reports and guidelines that are out there, and of course all these pooled fund studies that we've got like Aurora and Clear Roads and MDSS and those kind of things. The other thing that I'm after is, and hoping that you guys can help me out there, volunteers to be part of the community of practice on road weather management. Of course, the values that the committee has that they just pushed out in the last month or so are diversity, inclusion, equity, and non-bias. So we're trying to get that inclusion of everybody in the committee. And then what I'm really after also is a volunteer state DOT that would like to be a vice chair to help me out. So with that, looking at the structure itself, the actual committee on TSO, the strategic purpose is to focus on transportation operations, emergent technologies, with the goal of improving safety, system reliability, and highway system performance. They have 7 goals, or we have 7 goals within the committee. And that's to advance the state of the practice and deployment of operation systems, advance the state of the practice on performance of traffic incident management nationally, facilitate safe, efficient movement of freight and federal movement. As you may or may not know, freight, the Committee on Freight and the Special Committee on Communication was rolled into our committee, so we are all one committee now. Implement best practices for system integration, operability, standards, and cybersecurity. Integrate new and emerging connected and automated vehicle technology to improve safety, increase reliability, preserve infrastructure, and reduce congestion. Ensure that existing communication technologies remain available for transportation and capture the benefits of new and emerging communication technologies. So that's that communication piece that we're talking about, what technologies are out there. From a communication standpoint, we can really leverage for V2I and I2V and that whole thing with connected automated vehicles. Increased standardization and consistency of ITS deployment and the modernization of technologies and their integration into agency operations. So the Committee on TSO structural organizational structure. Bill Panos from Wyoming DOT is our chair. The vice chairs are Russ Buchholz from North Dakota DOT and Tony Cradfield from Michigan. As you can see, the overall structure and the subcommittees, there's 3 subcommittees. There's a subcommittee on operations, one on technology, and the subcommittee on performance management and data. Each one of the 2 committees there you can see in green have 3 working groups under them. Operations strategies in the far left, TIM or traffic incident management, and then the freight operations are the 3 working groups within operations. Within technology, we have the ITS, or Intelligent Transportation Systems. We have the working group on communications technology, and we have the Connected Automated Vehicle working group. And each one of those has dual chairs in them. And again, the folks that are in charge of those areas and the subcommittees are on the website, as well as the subcommittee on performance management and data. Galen McGill is our research development and implementation coordinator. Under that area, he's kind of a one-man wrecking ball over there, and then I am the chair right now of the Committee on Practice on Road Weather Management, and that area kind of encompasses all of the areas within this committee and has a role and responsibility of making sure that those ideas and initiatives are woven in and baked into all of those working groups and subcommittees. So the community of practice and road weather management, just the concept of the community of practice, the purpose that they came up with, that AASHTO came up with on this, was to establish and share information, highlight best practices, and resolve common issues as a way to extend the reach, value, and impact of the committee, the subcommittees or working groups, to member DOTs beyond the formal committee structure. The mission statement that we came up with at the Beckman Center on the Community of Practice for Road Weather Management was to promote the implementation of road weather management solutions and strategies that minimize the impacts of weather events on transportation system operations to increase safety and reliability. And that statement there, that safety and reliability, is woven into a lot of what we do in the whole area of TSM&O. So there's a lot of parallels and connections between TSM&O and pulling out those ideas into this committee from the community of practice on road weather management. Our strategic areas of focus in the community of practice for road weather management are to increase safety of driving during road weather events, identify needed research as it applies to road weather management and the impact on the committee on TSO, the committee on STO. It's TSO. It's Transportation System Operations, so the T and the S are backwards there. I apologize for that. Integrates road weather management solutions and strategies into the committee on TSO subcommittees that are essential elements. Be a liaison with other AASHTO committees, including the Pooled Fund Studies, TRB. As I said, I'm the liaison also between this committee and the Committee on Maintenance. Share road weather management practices and technology transfer. Share current and future ideas on weather, data, information processing, decision support tools, performance management research. Consider road weather management for multimodal or multi-agency priority corridors, such as cross-jurisdictional considerations, local agencies, multimodal travel considerations, so that whole thing of making sure that we have some sort of seamless coordination between jurisdictions when it comes to weather information. Road weather management strategies applicable to the Committee on TSO, ITS, and of course all those are just listed in the committee structure itself. Connected Automated Vehicle, freight, traffic management. Again, it's just all of those that we encompass to make sure we're considering those strategies that they're trying to deploy and how it fits with road weather management. Support road weather management integration, interoperability, and standards for public agency benefit. So just the transportation systems management operations, the TSM&O strategies and solutions. I just kind of put this up here. A lot of you probably have seen this before. You already use some of these strategies in your agency. I just kind of highlighted the road weather management. Of course, that is one of the solutions to make sure we keep that in mind as we deploy these strategies. I'm not going to go through all these, but as you can see, there's quite a grocery list here of available ideas that can be leveraged to help improve safety and travel reliability. So with that, some of the road weather management strategies that are used by DOTs. Again, I'm not going to read all these, but you can see, there's road weather responsive management strategies. There's RWIS, there's AVL, there's decision support systems, there's the integrated mobile observations, there's, of course, all the things across there on the right side with the National Weather Service, ASOS, AWOS. Just the massive amounts of data that can be collected from weather is tremendous, especially when we start getting into and leveraging mobile data like many of us are doing with snowplow trucks and some of our fleet vehicles. So that challenge is coming. The more real-time information we can have for motorist advisory warnings becomes very important, especially with the way weather changes are happening now. We seem to go from extreme highs and lows. There's concern with coastal areas starting to flood and hurricanes and things like that. All these things become very important, how we leverage them and use them within the committee and the community at large. Just some other community of practice on road weather management related programs. Many of you probably already know a lot of these. Again, I just wanted to list some of the initiatives that we're involved with now that we're trying to make sure we're integrated with, especially when you look at some of these other committees like the Committee on Maintenance, COP, Road Weather Management, the EDC 4 and 5 initiatives, the things that FHWA is doing. You look at Aurora and Clear Roads and some of the pooled fund studies that are out there, PIARC, all those all have common goals and activities that are going on that we can leverage to help improve our communication and our use of road weather management solutions. So one more slide here, just considering some of these questions. Again, this is just looking at the questions to consider for road weather management within the committee. Just going forward, we need to look at the key issues and challenges facing road weather management, integrating into the committee itself, those activities and initiatives that are going on and what the relationship is between them and how road weather management would fit. Top 3 priorities going forward in the next 3 years, look at strengths and weaknesses within the program. Do other DOT staff groups, partner agencies, legislators understand the business case for TSM&O? Is there a business case that we could provide to like legislators and the public and executive staff that would help them understand the importance of weather and the impact it has on some of the things that agencies do internally? What kind of relationship exists between the districts and region congestion management plans and road weather management investments? How interoperable are the DOTs and the TOCs and TMCs with road weather management? In other words, the devices, the software, the systems, the solutions, are they interoperable? Are they integrating the data? Are they actually using applications in near real time to provide motorist advisory warnings or other automated systems that can be leveraged by operators and others in the department? To what extent are road weather management technologies and systems standardized and documented? To what extent have road weather management objectives and performance measures been identified? What gaps exist? Is there a good working relationship between the DOT and public safety agencies in headquarters as well as in the field? So now I'm going to turn it over to Romer Alfalor from the Federal Highway Administration. He'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that they're doing in their area. Romer?
Thank you, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Romer Alfalor. I'm with the Federal Highway Administration Road Weather Management Program. I've been with the FHWA for 18 years, 14 years with the Road Weather Management Program, and 4 years in the Office of Infrastructure, the Office of Asset Management. And before that, I was a transportation consultant for 9 years. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Road Weather Management Program at FHWA, It is part of the Office of Operations. And our mission is basically the same as what Steve showed you earlier about the mission of the community practice, which is to minimize the impact that weather has on the transportation system performance to improve safety and reliability. And we do that by conducting research, development, and deployment activities so that we can improve the existing practices of transportation agencies. Specifically, we help agencies manage highway operations under adverse weather conditions using a variety of strategies such as traveler information, traffic control, and maintenance management. And Steve showed you a long list of road weather management strategies that agencies can implement to minimize the impacts that weather has on the system. We also are able to accomplish our mission by coordinating with the transportation, both the transportation and weather communities, internal to the USDOT, with FHWA and other agencies in the U.S. Department of Transportation, as well as a lot of external partners, including the state DOTs, local governments, National Weather Service, academia, private sector, and other organizations. So since the program was created about 20 years ago, we've been focusing on areas to accomplish our mission, and the current elements of our program are shown here. There are 6 of them, including coordination with our stakeholders, which is very important. We also working on evaluating and managing the performance of the transportation system during weather events, and also the performance of the transportation agencies, how they address the or manage the transportation system during those events. More recently, we are working on developing tools and applications using connected vehicle data, and also for developing automated vehicle applications. We've also been working on developing, implementing, and deploying strategies for weather responsive management. And I'm going to talk about that later as part of our EDC Everyday Counts initiative. The fifth bullet there, technology transfer, training, and education, that's a very important element of our program. And finally, we're working on, we're looking at how extreme weather events and climate change affect the transportation operations and the sustainability of transportation operations. So I'm going to talk about giving you more details about some of these program elements, starting with stakeholder coordination. We've been doing this since the program was created, and basically right now we sponsor annual meetings, including the road weather management stakeholder meetings, which we've been hosting for more than 15 years. We also, every 2 years, conduct the workshop and stakeholder meeting on weather responsive traffic management. And for the past 4 years, we've been conducting twice a year the regional roundtable meetings where transportation agencies can share their experiences, technologies, as well as other issues they face related to road weather management. And so that is a forum that agencies can use, transportation agencies can use to share experiences and other road weather management ideas and practices. We also either co-sponsor or participate in a variety of meetings hosted by our stakeholders, including the Transportation Research Board. We work mainly with the Surface Transportation and Winter Maintenance Committees of TRB. We also coordinate with AASHTO committees on maintenance and the CTSO, the TSO, as well as the AASHTO CoP, the Snow and Ice Cooperative Program. On the weather community, we coordinate with the American Meteorological Society and the National Weather Service. And we work with a number of pool fund programs that are focused on road weather management, including Aurora, Clear Roads, the TMC Pool Fund. And we're also active in the PIARC, which is an international organization. As I mentioned earlier, recently we've been focused on developing tools and applications for connected automated vehicles, or CAV. That includes the development of a tool that can be used to make available and also quality check data from both fixed and mobile road weather sensors of transportation agencies. And that tool is the Weather Data Environment. We've also been working on implementing connected vehicle-enabled weather-responsive traffic management strategies, working with states to implement strategies for responding to weather events. The integrating mobile observation, involves collecting and using vehicle-based observations for road weather management, and I'm going to talk about that as part of the EDC4 initiative. We've also developed the Pike Alert tool, which is also called the Vehicle Data Translator. It is a tool used to quality check road weather observations, and it's now being used by a number of transportation agencies. We also recently developed a model or tool for predicting road conditions using static and mobile observations, including traffic and infrastructure conditions. And that model is currently being demonstrated in Kansas City. And more recently, we have been engaged in research, testing, and evaluation of automated driving systems. Technology transfer training and education. As I said, that is a very important element of our program, and we've been delivering training courses on road weather management for several years now through the SITE program at the University of Maryland. There are 3 courses that we've been delivering, and those courses are currently being converted to NHI web-based training courses. We've also developed a number of guidelines that transportation agencies use for road weather management, as listed here, including the Connected Vehicle-Enabled WRTM guidelines, the siting guidelines for environmental sensing stations, the road weather messaging, variable speed limits, and the integrating weather into TMC operations. And finally, we regularly conduct webinars through the ITS T3 program at the US DOT, as well as the National Operations Center of Excellence, which is hosting this webinar this afternoon. Steve mentioned about the EDC initiative that we have been deploying for the past couple of years. EDC stands for Everyday Counts. And as I mentioned earlier, the goal of the mission of our program is to deploy technologies and road weather management technologies. And what the EDC program is it helps agencies deploy proven but underutilized technologies. And for the past 2 years, we've been deploying a couple of solutions for road weather management under the Weather Savvy Roads initiative. First is Pathfinder, which involves collaboration or improving the collaboration between the state DOTs, the National Weather Service, and their private weather sector provider. And the goal is to provide consistent and impact-based messaging related to adverse weather conditions and road conditions. The second solution that we've been deploying under the EDC4 initiative is the integrating mobile observations. What it is it involves implementing advanced vehicle-based technologies to collect and utilize data for road weather management. So that initiative, the EDC4 program, ended in December, or the end of December, but we will continue to support and help transportation agencies that are interested in deploying either or both solutions. And at the end of 2018, we have about 30 states that have already implemented either Pathfinder or integrating mobile observations. And the other EDC initiative that we are deploying, which is part of the EDC 5, the current cycle of the Everyday Counts program, is the weather responsive management strategies. It is one of the 10 initiatives that were selected for the 2019 and 2020 cycle. So that begins this year. What it is, it focuses on using mobile and connected vehicle data for traffic and maintenance management during weather events. So it builds upon the integrating mobile observations solution that we deployed in EDC4. So under our Weather Responsive Management Strategies initiative, we are focusing on 2 types of strategies for traffic management, including advisory and control strategies, as well as maintenance management for both winter and non-winter maintenance activities. So we are in the process of developing a deployment plan for the weather responsive management strategies, and we are waiting for a report on which states have signed up for this initiative, and our next step will be to help those states implement this particular solution. So our goal, or what we see our role is at Federal Highways in the CTSO community of practice for road weather management, is basically to help first understand and mitigate the impacts that weather has on the transportation system operations, those strategies that Steve showed you earlier, including freight operations. We also will be able to support and facilitate the integration of weather information in the TSO activities. So in order to do to make sure that weather is incorporated in those activities, we have to make sure that weather information is also made available or is used for those activities. We will help build the connection between agency operations and maintenance. Historically, there has been a disconnect between agency operations and maintenance, and it's good that we have that's why there is a TSCT, Transportation Systems Management and Operations in a lot of agencies, because it builds that connection between those 2 units in transportation agencies. We will also help develop decision support tools for TSO during weather events. And finally, we'll be able to provide a forum or venue that transportation agencies can use to collaborate and exchange information, as well as disseminate best practices on road weather management among TSO staff. So that's what we see our role is, but we are open to any suggestions or ideas from the committee on what they think we can help with on the community of practice for road weather management. So that's a brief overview of the road weather management program, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have later in the Q&A part of this webinar. And before I turn it over to Rick Nelson, who's going to talk about TSMO 365 and conduct a poll among the participants, I'm going to let Paul Pisano talk a little bit about the road weather management program. If you don't know Paul, he is the team leader for the road weather and work zone program at Federal Highway Administration. And if you don't already know, Paul decided to call it quits. So after more than 33 years with the Federal Higher Administration, he is retiring this month. And so Paul was actually in the CTSO meeting 2 years ago gave a presentation on road weather management, FHWA road weather management. So Paul?
All right, thank you, Romer. Just really quickly wanted to say a couple words. First of all, as Romer said, I'm going to be retiring officially the end of February. Last day in the office will be the 14th, and I want to say how much I've enjoyed working with many of you in the road weather management and work zone management areas. As captured in what you just heard from Steve and from Romer, what this community practice is all about is very much a part of what we've been promoting under road weather management at Federal Highway for years, and are really happy to see it come together through this community practice. There's a lot of great work out there, and also a lot of great opportunity to do better, and I think that this community practice is going to really help move, particularly in the traffic system management area. I think we've done, we have a lot to show for our work in the maintenance area, and still emerging and building in the traffic management area. And I think this is great to see it all come together between what this committee is doing, the community practice, as well as some of the work that we'll be doing, Federal Highway will be doing with a number of state DOTs under the Everyday Counts program that Romer mentioned. The other thing I wanted to mention is that my position is out there for as a open vacancy within the Federal Highway Administration. They're under USA Jobs. There is a position, Lead Transportation Specialist, Road Weather Management and Work Zone Management Team Leader. That position is open until February 4th, so I'd certainly encourage you to give that some consideration, and thank you for the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Paul. So I'm going to turn it over to Rick Nelson now from AASHTO.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Before I get started, I want to congratulate Paul on his long, successful career with FHWA. As Romer and Steve mentioned, I'm Rick Nelson. I'm AASHTO COP coordinator. And COP, if you haven't heard about us, is AASHTO's technical service program that focuses on both winter maintenance and road weather management. I've been in this position for about 4 years now, but I've been with COP basically since its beginning back in the mid-90s, and it's been very rewarding being able to work with Paul for some of those 30-plus years on these road weather management issues. In a previous life, I was with the Nevada DOT, finishing up in their director's office in charge of operations. And Paul, I hope it's not the 30 years of working with me that's driven you to retirement. But anyway, it's been very fruitful. One of the things, or before I get started, just a couple of comments. The winter maintenance community, and Paul sort of alluded to this, has been using different kinds of technologies and strategies to mitigate the impacts of bad weather over the years. And we've seen a very important connection between the network operators, the TSM&O community, and the maintenance community, particularly in bad weather events. And one of the things that Steve Cook forgot to mention in his long list of extracurricular activities is the fact that he also is a liaison to the COP technical service program. We included Steve in our steering committee a few years back because there's just such an important connection between the maintenance operations community and the TSM&O community, particularly during bad weather events. So I have just a few slides to talk about here. I'm pretty sure I'm preaching to the choir when you look at this chart over on the left-hand side of the screen, And I think the thing that I want to point out is the fact that bad weather contributes to about 15% of all question. And I would expect that weather plays a role in a fair portion of those traffic incidents that occur. So I really don't think that anybody needs to belabor the point that bad weather really does have a significant contribution to a degradation in reliability and system performance. So what we want to do is spend the next few minutes doing some quick polls. It's your chance to participate and to give us some feedback to make sure that we're going in the right direction. And if you look towards the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's our first quick poll there. I think in order to sort of tie some of these things together, it's important for us to know where you view TSMO, TSM&O when you come to work in the morning. It's through what lens do you see this activity. So if you could just go down and click on that group that best represents where you are. I see those poll numbers creeping up there, which is good. If by chance you can't see all of the options, there should be a slider that pops up on the right-hand side of that poll, and you can scroll up and down to see where you are. You know, historically, at least on the maintenance side, it used to be when the weather came in, you just sort of rode out the storm and then you set about the business of recovery after it was all done. You know, the way that our customer, the traveling community, view things these days, that's just not an acceptable business model. And on the maintenance side, we've become very proactive in how we deal with these bad weather events. And, I think that's something that's important to carry through. We'll give just another second or so for our little quick poll to close here. It looks like we have a pretty good spread between the DOT central office and the regional areas. So let's go ahead and close this poll out. Please don't feel shy about clicking the button. There is some anonymity to this, so please don't feel bashful about that. All right, so let's move on to the second poll. 365, we talk about bad weather. Bad weather really means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it doesn't fit all. If we take a look at this example here, it was Storm Harper that actually occurred earlier this season. You could see that there's a whole variety of mix of bad weather events that took place, from high winds to snow to ice to rain to tornadoes. So when we think about the different strategies that we can use, different TSMO strategies that we can use to help mitigate the effects of that bad weather, it certainly doesn't fit one size fits all either. And depending on where you sit when you come in at the beginning of your shift, can have a different take on those kinds of strategies that work best for you when bad weather takes place. So let's open up this second quick poll here, and it would be very good to see where you most closely identify yourself with. If it's like in a traffic operations center, or if you're in some kind of a maintenance operations or support area, it would be really good for us to sort of see what kinds of strategies to deal with these bad weather events work best for the different groups that are out there. So we'll go ahead and I'll leave this open again for a couple of more seconds to see where folks come. I think the important thing here for these first two questions, these sort of demographic questions, is we want to be sure that we're covering all of the different groups out there that have a role to play in their TSM&O operations. If it looks like maybe there's a group that's underrepresented, we'll take some special effort to go out and seek out input from those folks. I also would like to say that, you know, if you're work for a consultant or you've got some consultant support activities, go ahead and click on this. You support a particular group or an area, and we'd like to capture that as well. Okay, I think we've sort of stabilized here. Let's go ahead and close this second poll, and we want to talk a little bit about where you get your data. When you think about the different strategies that Steve talked about and that Romer talked about, those things require data to make them work. And we're very interested in where you get your sources of road weather data. There's a lot of different places out there for you to acquire data. There's the fixed RWIS, mobile RWIS, the National Weather Service is out there. Third-party data is also available, and private weather sources. We're really interested to see where you get those data from. Now, this poll question number 3. Let's see, is that open? There we are. There's some 10 different options here for you to click in, and so you probably will have to use that slider to be able to see all of the different options that are available. Now, if it comes to be that you get your road weather information data from someplace that's not actually listed in this poll, go ahead and use the discussion pod and just type it in. We thought we were being pretty inclusive when we were making this list, but we might have missed something, or there might be a source of data that you use on a regular basis to drive some of your TSMO 365 activities. Now, when we're talking about TSMO 365, what we're talking about really are those strategies, those road weather strategies that make a positive impact on how the system operates during weather events. And you know, I suspect that there's a lot of strategies that you all are using that do make this positive impact, particularly in bad weather. You might not be thinking about them as in a TSMO 365 context, but they really do work when there's poor weather out there. So I think that I'll give you just a few more seconds. This is a big list. You could check on all of them that apply. I don't think you're limited to just one there. Okay. I think let's go ahead and close this poll for now. And we want to move on to the last and final question of the day. And that really is the focus areas, these TSMO 365 focus areas. And again, TSMO 365 is something that we've coined to describe those kinds of strategies that provide a robust, reliable, resilient, safe program of TSMO. And there's a lot of different weather events out there. They're not just limited to snow and ice. There's dust, there's rain, there's flooding, fog, other poor visibility issues. And so what we're trying to get to in this last poll question are the three strategies that you use to provide a positive impact on your system operation in bad weather. Like I say, TSMO 365 really isn't anything new. I think any agency that operates in areas subject to poor weather have started thinking about and taking steps to either develop proactive strategies, TSM&O strategies using forecast data, or they're using near real-time data to drive active warnings and that sort of thing. I think looking across the U.S., every state has a very robust 511 system, a system to communicate with road users. But taking that communication to the next level through EDC4, the Pathfinder and the IMO program, really puts a proactive spin onto those communications to develop consistent messages. So traveler information is certainly an important piece of this TSMO 365 program that's out there. One of the things that, while you're sort of pondering your top three picks here, is what are we going to do with this in the future? And really our goal is to identify those top, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 strategies that again provide this robust, reliable, resilient program of TSMO, this TSMO 365, so that as the community of practice, we can help agencies that might want to develop those strategies into their own toolbox to deal with bad weather. It will help us to provide touch points between some of the other committees, the maintenance committee, for example, or the COP committee, or any of those other pooled funds that are out there. But it will sort of give us a common set of strategies that we want to focus on and work on in the future. So I think, again, the poll has pretty well stabilized here. People have had their opportunity to put those check marks in the boxes. And so with that, Steve, I want to thank everybody for participating in this poll and providing us your feedback. We'll take these and move forward with them in the future. So with that, Steve, I want to turn it back to you to talk a little bit about some next steps.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Yeah, I echo what Rick said there. I thank you, everybody, for participating in this poll. It really is helping us to gauge some of the important initiatives going forward with the committee and what the community of practice needs to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about next steps, and as Rick said, I am the liaison between COP and the TSO committee and the Committee on Maintenance. So those three AASHTO committees, kind of the three-legged stool. I provide that information and that communication between those committees. So these kind of things do help quite a bit in formulating our discussions during our annual face-to-face meetings. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Paul Pisano for all of his valuable leadership he's provided all the years. I've known Paul for about 15 years, and I can't say enough about Paul. He's been a great liaison to help us move forward with a lot of these initiatives. He's provided tremendous guidance when we've needed discussion and moving forward with some of these activities that FHWA has provided not only in their area, but also how they push this into the public agencies, especially the state DOTs. Again, I just applaud Paul for everything he's done over the last 15 years since I've known him, but I know he's been there 33 great years with FHWA. So thank you, Paul. One of the other things I'd like to mention, since I have a few minutes here, is when you talk about extreme weather events. So we've just, in Lansing, Michigan, is where I live. We've kind of been through some extreme weather events, and the really record. They said this dates way back in time as far as the recorded time when we've had this extreme weather event. So yesterday, all the schools closed down. I think they're all closed between Monday today till Thursday. They may open Friday. So yesterday, we got anywhere from 6 to 12 inches of snow throughout most of the states. Various pockets got 12. I think we ended up with about 6 here in Lansing. Okay, no big deal. A lot of places get that. But right behind it, our high today, this is how extreme it gets. But it's very unusually extreme. But this past summer, to give you an example, we had more 90 days this last summer in the 3 months of summer, basically. We had more 90-degree days than they had recorded like in the last 30 or 40 years. So now fast forward to where we're at today, it's another extreme. It's nothing to really have 90-degree days. I know Arizona and those states have 90-degree days all the time, but here in Lansing, Michigan, it's not the norm to have consecutive 90-degree days day after day. And then you fast forward again to today. Yesterday, the temperatures rose to about 30 degrees. Today, they've dropped to about 10. Tomorrow, our high is -7, and it stays there right through Thursday. We get up to about 2 on Thursday. They're predicting 16 on Friday. They're predicting 32 on Saturday and 42 on Sunday. So you talk about extreme weather events, and it just seems like weather has become such an important aspect of what we do in our daily lives and how it impacts traffic. And they seem to be these slam dunk events now, more than ever before. So making sure we understand going forward this whole concept of TSMNO 365 and the community of practice on road weather management. We put this slide together here. This is our last slide to kind of talk about what we want to do going forward. What's the next step? So obviously we want to gather the information from the webinar. The poll questions are important. Anything else you can provide to us. We'd like to initiate some amplifying questions, go into a peer exchange or workshop to help identify kind of the things below. That workshop could be a face-to-face outside of the TSO face-to-face that we have annually, or maybe at that annual meeting. So one of the questions is just how we should be structured, how this community of practice on road weather management should be structured within the community or within the committee of TSO. Right now on our list on their website, there's 18 champions in this committee that has volunteered and has risen their hand to let me know they're willing to participate in webinars or other, or it might be a workshop face-to-face, or even coming to the annual meetings, which helps a lot. We want to look at issues and challenges facing the road weather community, of course, and how it integrates, like I said before, into the initiatives by those working groups, the activities they've got going on now, and then look at some of these top priorities within the road weather management over the next 3 years. What are our top priorities, as Rick has said? What are those like high payoffs that we can look at that we need to really concentrate on? Maybe look at strengths and weaknesses, something like, almost like we did with the capability and maturity framework. You're looking at things like the business process, the systems and technologies, performance measures, collaboration, those dimensions, those capability dimensions that were essential in understanding what the strengths and weaknesses are in a given area. And I think the road weather management, it might behoove us to look at that and start asking those questions in a face-to-face meeting. So the other area is the gaps and needs of data. Of course, that could be part of that whole systems and technologies when you're looking at system automation and performance needs. You know, performance metrics that you need. I know Iowa is big in performance metrics, and Minnesota's big in performance metrics when it comes to weather and the data they're getting from the snowplow trucks. That's going to be, I think that's going to get bigger before it gets smaller. It's going to be a very profound way of measuring the value add to having mobile data and some of the data that we get in the applications that are generated, because there is a cost associated with that. So to be able to show executive leadership or management, you know, the benefit of those tools, I think has a heavy weight in automating the systems we currently have that are all manual. Not always, they're not all manual, but there's a lot of systems that are manual and very, very labor intensive. But there's some systems that we can automate now, but there's barriers that may exist, and that gets back again to that strengths and weaknesses and looking at those and looking at priority action items to overcome some of those barriers. And of course, the next bullet point, the future of connected automated vehicles, the impact on road weather management, and the impact on connected automated vehicles from road weather management. So kind of is a two-way street there. We really need to start looking at, you know, as this the true deployment from our OEMs starts happening. When you look at the Lyfts and Ubers that are really looking at this automated systems, you know, I'm looking out my window right now and there is about 10 inches of snow piled in berms all over the place. I'm curious to know how an automated vehicle would behave in this environment. I'd like to know how it behaves when it's minus 10 degrees tomorrow. So those are some of the challenges that I think the OEMs need to overcome. And understanding their needs and ours, I think, goes a long way. So I think the discussion also needs to revolve around, you know, what's the vehicle going to look like in the future, and how do we engage the auto manufacturers in these discussions? And I think that's where the USDOT and FHWA has a heavy hand in helping us there. That gets to the last bullet point, how can FHWA help? I think I kind of stated that, but again, just providing that guidance, that leadership that Paul always did for us when he created a lot of these programs. I think he was instrumental in understanding the need and providing the programs that we needed to help move these things forward. So kudos to him and his team, including Gabe Guevara and Romer, of course. They were great in helping us, Ray Murphy and those other folks that are out there in the regional offices, those satellite offices that help us with everything that they do. So the last couple notes here, just coordinating the work with the prior maintenance, peer exchange, stakeholder meetings, you know, the pooled fund studies like COP, Clear Roads, Aurora, the MDSS, and all those maintenance decision support systems, including PIARC and those, the PIC Alert, FHWA. In fact, I'm going to the Aurora meeting the end of March to really have a look at that program and see where MDOT's going and what the future of Aurora is. So if any of you are going there to San Diego the last week of March, I'll see you there. And then the last bullet point, Rick had mentioned this follow-up with expanded questionnaire to the TSO community to identify Rick mentioned 4 to 6, I've got 6 to 8 there, top priorities to refine a list of high payoff road weather management strategies. I think that, you know, we could look at if we started to better understand some of our strengths and weaknesses in these areas as a community, and then start to look at the weaknesses and we shake out of that some of these priority action items that we could act on and let the community know and the committee know that these are the initiatives we're going to be working on going forward. So with that, we are going to take anything we can get out of this webinar and start looking at a peer exchange or a workshop. Start looking at some amplifying questions, possibly get a survey out there in the near future, a questionnaire to the community, and find out what those responses might be. I know I had worked with the maintenance committee on a peer exchange that we did in maintenance that were regionally based. There was 4 of them around the country back about 5 or 6 years ago, and that went very well. We learned a lot from that. Steve Lund was instrumental in helping us with that from our committee on maintenance. So that might be a kind of a template that we might use going forward to figure out how we might do something like this in the road weather community area. So with that, I'm done. We're going to allot about 20 to 25 minutes for Q&A. So I think we'd like to step back and have a look at any questions you might have out there. Like I said, the one slide I had, I don't know if that can be brought back up, but these are some I had some questions to consider. It was my second to last slide. If there's anything there that anybody thinks might jump out at them, or the next one up there. There you go, yes. This is just a grocery list that I kind of threw a dart at the wall. I wanted to see how it would stick. Just my ideas, go into some of the EDC4s, EDC5, listen to the folks in Iowa, listen to the folks in Rhode Island and Connecticut and Minnesota and Nevada and California, just sitting in the room and listening to everybody. This is just the 9 questions, kind of generalized, that I could think of that we might want to think about going forward. Really, these were what we used as the footprint to develop that last slide, the TSMNO 365 next steps. So those questions that I have there really just kind of more refined from what I have here. So if there's anything you can think of that could help us going forward, that's what we're looking for. I would love to have more volunteers. If anybody wants to be a volunteer to this committee and help me out, my email address, I'll put it here in the pod talk thing here. I'll type that in a minute. That's my email. If you're interested, just send me an email. Tell me you're interested. I'll make sure Nilu and Patrick Son and those folks have you in their list. And of course, Patrick Zielinski also at AASHTO will make sure you get on their website. There was one other thing I was going to mention. Also, I would like to have a vice chair if I could. If everybody else out there wants to raise their hand, I think I have an FHWA liaison. I think that's Romer Alfalor. So if anybody wants to volunteer, DOT individual that would like to help me out as a vice chair, I would greatly appreciate that. I hate to be a one-man wrecking ball and be the only voice out there. It would be great if I could have that support. So going forward, any questions, comments? This is our chance to dialogue a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. So let's give folks a minute or so to see if they have any questions. They can type it up, or any comments. I see Lisa already asked a question, and Romer was able to type her answer, but I'll just quickly read it. So Lisa asked if the states are required to participate in EDC5 innovations, and Romer mentioned that it's completely voluntary.
Yes, Lisa, the EDC5 is similar to EDC4. Basically, the states that are interested in deploying the EDC5 initiative or solution, which is in this case the weather responsive management strategies, they can sign up through their division office, the coordinator in the state, to indicate their interest in deploying the initiative. So it is not required. It depends on whether the state determines that they need or they can benefit from implementing the solution.
Thank you.
Sure. And I'd like to mention that the deadline for the states to sign up for the EDC5 initiative is actually the end of this month. And so far we have about 80% of the states that have already indicated their or submitted their reports, which of the 10 initiatives they want to implement. And so far we have about, I think, 29 states that have indicated they are or have signed up for WRMS, but I think 10 of those indicated that they are already institutionalized. So we have to talk to those states and figure out how they came up with that determination that they are institutionalized in regards to WRMS.
Great. So I do have the slides up here directly. If anybody is interested, you can download it. On the bottom right side, you see a pod where it says download slides. So the PDF version of today's slides are available there, as well as later on the website, we'll post the recording along with the slides and the full bios of the presenters. Right.
Can I add to what I just mentioned, or what I just said, Nilu, about the EDC initiative? Actually, you're not required to sign up, but then, you can implement the initiative on your own, just much like the EDC4 Pathfinder and IMO. Some states have deployed the initiatives on their own. They didn't have to do it under the EDC banner. So that's another option that you can have.
Right. So the Steve shared his email here. If you later came up with any questions, or if you wanted to volunteer, feel free to contact him as well as us. But seeing no questions, no more questions, I just wanted to take a minute. Thanks everyone, both all of you who participate this webinar, and as well as our presenters, Rick, Romer, and Steve, for contributing to today's webinar. So that concludes today's webinar, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Nilo. Thank you, Romer, and thank you.